Welcome to Dementia Spring Dialogues, our podcast of a discussion between a geriatrician and an artist. I'm Marc Rothman, and this week we have Scotty Perry, photographer extraordinaire from here in Louisville, Kentucky, who has his new book of photography around the care of his aged grandparents, highlighting the fact that they suffered from dementia. And so, Scotty, great to have you on our podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So tell the viewers a little bit about this project. I understand it goes back to, 2017. You got some phone calls, things were happening with grandma and grandpa, or as you call them, mama and papa. So tell us all about it.
Yeah. So it was actually 2018. I got a call from my uncle saying that my grandmother had fallen ill. She wasn't in the best of health, but it was beyond what he could do and what my grandfather could do. We knew he probably had dementia about a year prior. When he left one day and then didn't come back. And then they found him in Cincinnati, which is, an hour and a half north of Louisville. He went to go get some cabbage from the store. He ended up at a ER because he wrecked his car. Luckily he was fine, but that was the first indication that, hey, there's something that's going on that's deeper than him just being forgetful. And I basically moved in with them for 16, 17 hours a day, slept at home, and then was back there in the morning at 5, 6 a.m. So they raised me at a young age. I was there probably for the majority until I was about 7 years old, maybe 8 years old. And so when they fell ill, it was a no-brainer. There was no question. I immediately made a phone call. I was like, hey, I have to do this. And then my boss was like, yeah, move in as long as you need to. You work from their house and take care of them. And so I was able to come full circle and take care of them in ways that they took care of me. And to kind of a way to pre-grieve what I knew was going to come, I took photos every day. It eventually became into a book of photos and a story of them. So each photo was just of their daily routines, me caring for my grandmother or my grandfather. A lot of with dementia, my papa had dementia, so a lot of the photos are of his routine. So it's him looking out the windows every day, or him going to the garage to piddle around with his old tools and starting stuff up. And then eventually, obviously, they kind of work into a little more heavy of a context where she kind of like going to the hospital more, and he's kind of lost and unsure what's happening. As a photographer, and there was no question I wasn't not going to bring my camera, right? Like it's always on me. I wasn't even looking to tell the story. I just knew that I wanted to take photos. It wasn't later until I realized that, hey, like there is a full story here. These really kind of can tell a story and can, I don't know, connect with people in a deeper way than just, a good photo or a heavy photo or a sad photo. It's a connection. So
were you expecting to come face to face with dementia? Did you know anything about it?
So I was familiar with it, but not in the firsthand aspect where I was the caregiver. Like I was with them and I experienced it. The repetitiveness of, well, Papa, this is what's going on. Well, Papa, this is what's going on. It wasn't always like a heavy atmosphere in there. I grew up there, so I was used to it. They were together for 72 years. They were married for 72 years, and they were in that house since like 1958, I think, or 55. But they were used to being alone. It was just the fact that they couldn't, that there was now nothing that they really could do for themselves, right? I think that's where the loneliness was. Mama couldn't be busy cooking for Papa or cleaning the house, or she lost an arm in the 80s. She quilted up until maybe 10, 15 years ago. She wasn't able to do that anymore. So her loneliness was out of, I think, boredom a little bit. Like she was like, this is, existentially going to happen eventually. She was ready for it.
So talk a little bit about the photography itself, right? A lot of it's interior. What did you set out to capture when you were photographing?
I guess my style is always telling a very honest, genuine story from my own perspective, which I think any good photographer should focus on. And so, I mean, nothing was posed, nothing was, like, hey, look over here. It was just, me doing what I did when I was there. A lot of it's interior because they didn't go many places. Mamaw eventually couldn't go out the house without us pretty much carrying her out the house. And then obviously there's some stuff in the garage where Papa would go out there and piddle, but I think being able to see a moment and capture it is the art itself. It's not, you're not creating something, but you're capturing something that is already kind of beautiful and already there. It wasn't a big house. It's a 800 square foot house. It's a very tight place to shoot. It's just capturing the walls and the air and then the furnace and the vents. So I was trying to create something that was, that you can kind of transport to when you're, looking at it.
You describe him really missing her when she was in the hospital or in
Yeah.
rehab, and then looking for, there's a lot of photographs, and we'll try to show a few of these,
Mhm.
of him really staring out the window.
Yeah, he always kind of stared out the window. He was, a nosy old guy who's, lived in the same house for, 60 years. But it definitely progressed and became more regular as she got more ill or was, not present. Um, he always looked, and when she was gone, it was a lot more often because she wasn't in her seat, she wasn't walking around, she wasn't talking to him, calling him Mr. Perry. There was all these things that he was missing. And honestly, like once, and I think about this quite a bit, once she passed away, he would look out the window, and I never asked him, I always pictured him envisioning like earlier time, like, like the 1950s, 1960s, like these colorful, desirable cars driving by and kids playing in the yard and people mowing the lawn. Because sometimes he would revert back to like, hey, Mamaw is actually, she's not that she's at the hospital, she's out getting groceries.
You could tell there's disorientation because that's how the book gets its name, right?
Yeah. So obviously in the later years, he had trouble keeping track of the day and the time. And he always would refer to the Weather Channel, his newspaper, and his TV guide, and then the wall calendar in the kitchen. And so the new year changed. We didn't change the calendars in the house because we were, we were busy taking care of them. We didn't really think about it that much. And then once she passed away, he was just like, something's gone. I don't know what it is. He was very frantic, very anxious. And I remember the day very clearly. He walked in the living room. He sat in his recliner that he always sat in, looked at the newspaper, looked at the Weather Channel, went into the kitchen, looked at the wall calendar. It didn't match, and did it 3 or 4 times. Eventually, he was like, this wall calendar needs to be updated. He was able to piece that together. Where often he would forget it, like by the time he walked from one area to the other area. And so I went to Walgreens, which is a mile away, got a new wall calendar, came back and put it up. And instead of him like marking like an X or scratching a date out to keep track, he wrote the word "here" on it, which is where the name of the book comes from. And it was very pivotal for me because I was like, why did he write the word "here" instead of marking it like with a circle or an X or scratching it out? Just like, Papa, like, why did you write that? And he's like, that's where we're at. We're right here. And like, I mean, I get emotional thinking about it because it was a pivotal moment for me in both that situation and just my own life, that like, we're always just right here. And this is where we're at. A buddy of mine's a tattoo artist, and I went there and I got it tattooed on my arm now, like in his handwriting, just so I can always, always have it and always see it.
That's amazing, so, right? When you have dementia, you are very much in the present. Mm-hmm. Even though people can often remember very far back to their childhoods.
Yeah.
Either way, I always explain to people, that person is sort of with you for a moment, and then a moment later, they're in sort of this new moment. Yep. And you can't depend on connecting them all in sequence. And you have to get over the need to do that and just to be present with them as you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I knew him my whole life, his whole life, not his whole life, my whole life. And there'd be days where he would call me boy because he wouldn't piece together that I'm his grandson who's now grown up. He would think that I was 16 years old now. Hey, Scotty, or hey boy, do you have a driver's license yet? I'm like, yeah, Papa, like I'm 34, 35 years old. Like I have a driver's license. So yeah, it definitely was day to day for him sometimes.
I'm sure you can't pick your favorite one, but what are some of your favorite images?
My favorite image probably in the whole book is he's in the hospital. My uncle is like draping a sheet over his head to keep him warm.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
Yeah, and I took the photo. I saw the image. I took the photo, and it immediately felt like a Renaissance painting, like an old like religious yes. Renaissance painting to me. Just the way like his demeanor, the way he looks, and then just the sheet going over his head.
That's great. That's great. One of the reasons that we're so interested at the Dementia Spring Foundation about partnering with artists is, to your point, you're capturing the intrinsic beauty. Mm-hmm. That people with dementia still have. They don't become less beautiful because they have dementia.
Right.
And I think that the pictures personally are very universal. There are thousands of families, to your point, the house, the smell, the life lived, the way you describe it, that are going through the same thing. And I think that a lot of people are going to find these images to really speak to them. Tell us a little bit about what's happened. You've gone out, you've gotten some of the books sold online. We partnered
Yeah.
together to try to raise awareness. What's happening with the book?
It really has blown me away because it's very heavy context. Had no idea how it was going to go. I was hoping to sell 10 probably, like my goal was 30 and then like 50 was like a pipe dream. I hit 50 pretty quick. I was like, oh, this is really awesome. And then in the last couple of weeks, I've had some people reach out about, I sent you the thing with the psychiatrist in Brazil, who took care of his own grandparents in a very similar situation. And he's like, I found you through a website who featured your work and I wanted a book. I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Somebody in Brazil wants like my book. It's been really, really incredible to have these one-on-one conversations with people and connect with them through, such a heavy topic where they probably felt like they were one of the only ones out there who has had this story, or like, it was too heavy to talk about. I don't know. It's absolutely, it's blown me away. Absolutely just blown me away.
Any closing thoughts from you about the project or about other people who are trying to think about doing some artistic work with people who have dementia?
Yeah. So one thing another thing that I've noticed with people just reaching out, it's like I've seen more and more people charge to document their own grandparents, their own parents, if it, being a dementia or other thing. Like my biggest like hashtag or like thing during the whole process when I was there was like document your grandparents, like document what matters, take photos of what matters. That if it's a family function or if it's a holiday. So if anything, I'd want to say like just it's important. Even if someone says like it's a heavy subject, my sister or my aunt or whoever they have an issue, they don't want me to take photos of it. Like they're going through it and you're going through it. Like you get to take that, they can grieve by pushing it away or forgetting it, but you're allowed to do what you need to do to work through it. And for me, it was photography. For someone else, it could be just, could be writing poems or poetry or just document it on paper.
Right. Do what you got to do, especially if you're a creator, right? Especially if you have a story to tell.
Yeah. Like if I have a day where I'm not creating, I feel it. I have to create.
Well, thanks a lot for talking to me today. That's fantastic.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it.